Took my daughter to school the next day. I don't know how I got from there to my mum's. I walked through the door. I said, just make it stop. And I literally, my body gave out and everyone said to me, you look dreadful.
Welcome to Your Business Quest podcast. I'm Osman Shariff, the Business Owners Coach, and I'm dedicated to guiding established experts like you through the journey of confidently growing your business without chaos and confusion. Come along as we navigate the unique chapters ahead of your business, exploring how to master your mindset and truly embrace your entrepreneurial superpower in everything you do. So if you're ready to make some real magic happen in your business, then let's embark upon this exciting quest together. Welcome to another episode of Your Business Quest. And today I'm just about to share with you a really profound conversation that I had. And I've just finished recording it. And honestly, I don't even know how to sum it up, but let me attempt to kind of share what you are going to be hearing. I had the pleasure of interviewing or having a conversation, I should say, with the wonderful Adele Martin. I met Adele many years ago. We used to work in the same bank before I left the corporate world. And then after that, I was delivering a few training courses at corporate events in that bank and other organizations and doing keynote speeches and doing things with teams. And at that point is when my paths crossed with Adele, where I was delivering a big workshop for the division that she was in. And then she's like, Osman, I want you to come and share this with her team and the Gillingham operation. And then I did some stuff around wealth dynamics with their teams as well. And so that's where I got to first meet Adele. And then Adele continued to climb her leadership ladder in the corporate world and then made some transitions, as you'll hear in her conversation, to then leave and start her own business. And that was very much fueled by her personal journey around, experiencing and having the menopause and the challenges that she faced, and then how she really used that to really focus on her development and then helping other people through that and really being an advocate for that. So you'll hear Adele share her experiences from being in corporate and then what her experiences were like when she was focusing on her executive coaching business, really focusing on professional women around, especially in the menopause, and helping them navigate through their careers and businesses in that way. So that's like the first two chapters. And then Adele really shares her vulnerability, her story of where she is now. And, I'm putting a bit of a trigger warning on this because I know it was quite a tough conversation for me to even be privileged to hear as well as a person. But it's about Adele shares her experience very recently when she was diagnosed with a terminal cancer and how that has massively shaped her chapter now moving forward in terms of how she's really focusing her time and her energy and building her legacy to really help other small business professionals who are going through cancer not to have to go it alone and not to have it really have a negative impact on their businesses if they choose to focus on their business as well. So as you can imagine, it is a very deep and powerful and personal and thought-provoking conversation. And honestly, I just have so much time and affection for the wonderful Adele for even showing up and sharing as much as she did on this. So I'm sure you'll be inspired. You'll get lots of help, words of wisdom that can help you in your business as well, and just that level of resilience and from a mindset point of view as well. And Adele also is a Lord profile from the Wealth Dynamics profile. And what I love, particularly right from the start, as you'll hear in our conversation, is she talks about how much knowing herself has helped her in the corporate world as a leader, how much it helped her as she started to grow her business, but also how it's helping her right now in the focus of what she's doing. So honestly, just I wanted to see you in for a real treat, and I genuinely mean that in a really humbling way. I'm sure you'll leave inspired. Please do obviously reach out if there's any questions or any thoughts or any support I can give you, and you'll see all the notes and the links in the show notes. But yeah, in a moment, I'm going to press play and you'll get to hear the wonderful Adele share her journey. I know you're excited to get going, but before we jump in, I want you to get the most from today's episode. And for you to do that, just like it would be if you go on any journey, you need to know where you currently are right now before just blindly moving forward. So I invite you to take my Business Magic scorecard right now so that you can get a snapshot of your current reality. You know what's going well in your business and where you've got the biggest opportunities for even more growth ahead. It's quick, typically taking less than 97 seconds. It's free, and I know it'll give you so much clarity. You'll get a personalised report with your results, along with some exclusive free resources to help you based upon your results to move things forward. I promise that it will help you to discover which of the 3 elements of my Business Magic formula you'd benefit from focusing upon right now. You'll then hear what's discussed in the rest of this podcast episode very differently and through a more personalised perspective with your scores in mind. And that, my friend, will help you when it comes to deciding what to implement and what actions to take as a result. So take action now. Simply go to osmansharif.com/scorecard or visit the links in the show notes. Okay, now let's get going. Adele, a very warm welcome. Honestly, it just feels like a trip down memory lane when we got to speak just before I hit record. And I am so grateful for you showing up here. And I know we're going to have a really important and meaningful conversation. So I just want to start by saying a warm welcome to you.
I know, a warm welcome. Like we were saying, it's like jumping on and like we were just in that meeting room having that session. So honestly, time just flies by and then sometimes it just goes so slow. So no, it's really good to see you.
Oh, well, I know you've got so much to share on your journey. We obviously met when you were still working in the corporate world, in the banking industry. But I also know, whether it's your career or as a business owner, journeys are very rarely a straight line. Okay, so can you just take us on a little bit of a whistle stop tour to share your path that you've been on and where you are at the moment, Adele?
Yeah, I will. So when you came and we had that amazing presentation as we were in Gillingham and we were talking about that, the interesting bit, it was just really before the financial crisis and everything changed in financial services. So for me, I've always been involved in, I was always put into teams that needed a bit of work. They were failing, there were issues, simply because I really like to get behind something and make a difference. That's always what I've done, to the point where I got moved because I would literally go and set fires and put them out because it was more exciting. So when you talk about leadership, I'm definitely a wartime leader as opposed to sort of a peacetime leader. But always I believe in situational. I can do both. But where I really enjoy it is in that wartime. And then it's careful what you wish for. So behind that, I also studied an MBA part-time. And as you know, anything to do with leadership psychology. And we know that I'm a Lord, and I dread to think how long ago we went through that profile, but I know it sits square and center with me as a Lord. And I was very aware that the traits that gives, it can really turn people off and really turn people on. But I also know what Adele looks like on a bad day. Now, that has been a massive journey to where I am now. So we've got that wonderful center. Then all of a sudden, I think everywhere in financial services changed. It changed forever. But the adrenaline was amazing. This was amazing wartime leadership. I just finished my MBA, lots of case studies, and I was creeping to just over 40. So, you know, family was getting older. And I was doing a lot of flying between London and Edinburgh. And I was always known for being top of my game, knowing what I was doing. But slowly but surely, and I can't even remember saying when, I started to just feel not right, just not right. And because the pressure we was on, and we're talking 14 years ago. Okay, so let's put this in perspective, because we think about timeline. 14 years ago, there was no diversity and inclusion. There was certainly no mental health, and there were certainly no menopause conversations 14 years ago. And still, men were dominating the boardroom. So I was still literally living in that man's world, although we were starting to see the turns of more women, and you just keep going and you keep going, and the pressures got tougher and tougher and tougher. And some of the basics, like probably eating and drinking, having meetings back to back. But we weren't in normal business as usual, and it was getting tougher and tougher and tougher. And I then I just I then felt my performance. So the old Adele to pick up a slide deck, right? You walk into the boardroom, you put it down, and I can just literally talk it through. Then all of a sudden I'm like, I can't remember what's on there. And I was like, this doesn't feel right. So the anxiety was building. I was going into meeting after meeting, but doing more and more and more prep to the point where the Lord and become very compulsive.
Yeah.
We've got to remember, we hadn't really talked about ADHD and
Mhm.
OCD. We hadn't. The more pressure I was under, the more I was going to like that really default one vision. That's what I was doing. And it built up and built up. And because everything was virtual, everyone go, how are you? But we're so busy, nobody really wanted to know the answer. And the question, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Because I was flying around and it was winter and we had lots of virtual meetings, nobody had spotted that I was losing weight after weight after weight and probably not looking myself because we were all tired. Long story short, I had to go to a meeting up in Scotland, and something quite bad had happened at home. And I was in that difficult position where I really had to go. I was the director of the change program. I had to go. So it's hard when you're a parent. What do you do? At that time, I made that decision and I went and I felt really, really bad. And as I walked in, I sat down. And obviously, it was a new audience. They sent the blonde in the shoes all the way from London into an Edinburgh boardroom. And she rocks up, and we were going into another neutral bank. It was neutral. They didn't know who it was. I sat
Yeah.
down and they asked me my name, and I totally forgot my name. But what that did was it triggered back to when I was a 5-year-old on the stage dancing, and they asked me my name, and I stuttered. And that had a speech impediment for my whole life. I was very good at mental words and not using, but because the pressure was building, I was in that boardroom, I just forgot my name. And they went, and you're supposed to be, a good performer, in jest. And I was like, I don't know how I got through the presentation, but I did. I left. I got in the taxi. As always, started to talk to me to the airport. I said, I'm really sorry. I can't talk. I really couldn't talk. I went to duty free and got 5 bags of wine gums, like family size, and I just took sugar because that was what was going on with lots and lots of sugar. Got home really late because that's what I was doing. Took my daughter to school the next day. I don't know how I got from there to my mum's. I walked through the door. I said, just make it stop. And I literally, my body gave out, and everyone said to me, you look dreadful. And straight away, everyone was supportive. Go and get referred. And they said, right, you've got anxiety and depression. I said, yeah, I know I'm sad, but I'm not built like that. That's not what I am. And they said, no, you should go on antidepressants. This was 14 years ago. And I'm going, no, it's more than that. I hurt. My bones hurt. I hurt. I can't think straight. I'm hot all the time. And they looked at me and I went, well, there's no way on this earth, age for just over 40, you could be menopausal. I went, well, I think I could be, because with everything that's been going on, I really could actually. And then literally, I was. And then the diagnosis I got back was age 40. Well, clearly I would suggest you go and get a less stressful job. And I was like, oh my God. I just worked my way up. I'd got my MBE. I got the most amazing job. I said to him, no, I'm not going to do that. But what I'm going to do, I realize I am broken. So I went away and first of all was like, menopause, age 40. That's what old women get. That's what grandmothers get. This was not me. And when I was talking to friends and people at work, they're going, oh, it's better to say on your 6th certificate you had mental health. And I was like, No, but that's well, yeah, there's an element of it, but it's a lot more than that. It's menopause. I said, no, no. And again, my mantra's always be the change you want to see. And the more I started talking about it, some women were like, oh, I wouldn't share it. And others were having the conversation. And in my sort of circle and my net were like, do you know what, Adele? I do feel like that as well. So we were starting that conversation. And I did go back 6 months later, but I finally left finance and I went into HR and had the pleasure of putting all the diversity and inclusion in, culture, leadership training. Because what I realized, women like me, we were fighting to get women in the boardroom and then they were leaving because of the pressures that we was under. So I was able to take some of my knowledge, and I then realized that my whole lifestyle and well-being, I love what got you here won't get you there, right? It's
Yeah.
exactly the same. When your hormones are in balance and it's all going through its cycle, you're absolutely fine. But once you hit sort of 40 onwards, you have to change everything. Nothing worked. And but that where it played into the strength of my OCD and tenacity and resilience is I just went away and then I realized there were 40 things a woman body changes over 40. And I pretty got bingo and hit every single one of them. But the thing is, it's just that I didn't know what I didn't know. And I truly thought I was just losing. Honestly, I said, thank God I'm not going mad, my performance and everything else. And then the interesting bit is people said to me, why didn't you tell me? I'm like, I I couldn't articulate to myself, let alone share with other people. And that's what I find a lot is until people are honest and vulnerable and share their stories, I didn't know what I was going through.
Adele, oh, well, thank you, first of all, for sharing that journey because, like, there's so much to unpack on that.
Yeah.
But a couple of things were just like, obviously, I knew you from before that period
Yeah.
where, we'll talk about your entrepreneurial superpower as a lower profile in a moment. But I remember were that type of person that was just like, you were on the top of your game. You just, you handled it. And that's a lot where your feedback and who you were kind of shone through, especially as a team. But it's also really sad when I think back at, and again, being really honest, I was a HR manager even before we met.
Yeah.
And so that was like way coming up for like 20 years ago.
Mm.
And I'm actually quite ashamed to admit that, like, I worked in a store where there's probably 80% of my team were females. Okay.
Mm.
And as a HR manager, I can't remember having any conversations about menopause at all. Does that make sense? And it
Mm.
just goes to show how times have changed. And there's been other
Mm.
great guests on the podcast that have kind of shared that as well. And even last week, Adele, I was at the graduation ceremony of a leadership program for another
Yeah.
organization. And it was so humbling the fact that these individuals were sharing their story over the last year.
Mm.
And a
Mm.
couple of them really shared openly around they were going after a promotion, they were going after pushing themselves out of their comfort zone,
Mm.
all whilst having that crash of confidence,
Yeah.
that change of identity, the who am I, what am I doing, why am I
Mm.
not feeling my normal self? And they did obviously share
Mm.
that was down
Mm.
to kind of
Yeah.
perimenopausal symptoms and
Yeah.
menopause symptoms. But it's scary to think how many people went through that and still currently go through that
Yeah.
without having that awareness as well.
Yeah, they do. And I went away and I've studied it ever since. The impact on the hormones on the female brain is unbelievable. So I was really able to sort of like work that through. And I love that. And we was able to adapt the leadership programs
Mhm.
and also set up working groups, champions, work with unions. So I was really able to embed that. And then my daughter finally finished uni. She had done her master's. So we kept her in education. She'd done her master's and then she went and got a job. And you're going to laugh. I was at the train station waiting to go home and I sat and I was like, oh, I don't need to go home. There is no washing up to do because Millie and her boyfriend had moved out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a really nice feeling. And also, what I was also realizing, there was a lot of call for women sort of outside of the bank. Yes, I loved what I was doing there, but a lot of women locally wanted me to help them as well. And then
Yeah.
there was also this connection, which is why a lot of women, why we can struggle with menopause. And that is a connection to aging. And we know society wise, it's challenging for women to age, especially in the elements of social media. And again, I'm thinking, do you know what? Over the last sort of 10 years, I have put my resilience system in with my
Mhm.
food, my movement and snooze, my mindset. So on most days, I could really hold on to all of these symptoms. So I was able sort of to share that. And I felt like I wanted to share that more. I love my job, but I was being pulled into all other aspects of HR, and I loved training, coaching, and that element of it. So I was heading into my 50th year. So I decided to show women, right, okay, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to do a bodybuilding competition just before my 50th birthday. And I prepped up for that. And I was starting to, then it was a side hustle, starting to coach
Yeah.
executive women outside of the bank, working towards that. And then I was, I remember it vividly. So it was 5 years ago on the 18th of October. It was World Menopause Day, and I thought, that's it, I'm going to put a post out. And my amazing friend was chatting to me all the way through while I was in Spain, preparing for this bodybuilding competition 2 weeks out. And she was recovering from breast cancer for a few years. She had an impact on that on her heart. And then by the time we were in the queue for the airport, I got the message I didn't want, and that is that we lost Kelly that evening. And
Sorry to hear that.
obviously, bless her, I couldn't go on to the show. So when I landed back in the UK, the team reversed me out because obviously we have to lose the body fat and it's a very stressful process. And as I left her funeral, I said to my mum, I've had an amazing time. I think I'm going to walk away. I think on my 50th year, I have no responsibilities. And Kelly's shown me how life is so short. And my amazing friend Sue helped me get over that. And then we reversed out. And then we went into lockdown. And I just, no, I left in the January because they gave me some time. And then I flew in February to New York with Christine, actually,
Right.
my old friend from Lloyd's. And we was at the Oprah Winfrey 2020 Vision in February, having an amazing time. We're going to set out our strategy and everything. Don't laugh. We didn't feel great on the way home. We had a cold the following week. Funny that. We sort of realised what we might have had. And then a few weeks later, we'd gone into lockdown. And I had just walked away from an amazing career, job security. And I thought, I'm going for it. I'm going to do it. So pushed hard into lockdown. But because like Zoom was normal for me, because
Yeah.
I had teams all around the world, it was natural. So when I first went out to Women in Business, they were like, oh, let's have a coffee chat. And I'm like, no, let's just have a video call.
Yeah.
So, I can honestly say that my family was safe and that lots of training become free, didn't it? So I
Yeah.
learned lots of training. There were networking all around the world. Everyone was on Zoom. So I took the opportunity to build that business, which I did. And during lockdown, I then lost Sue to breast cancer, who helped me get over Kelly. And I just said, look, we've got to do more. I feel like I need to set up some sort of charity or nonprofit, to help the families of the women
Yeah.
going through it. But circumstances to one side, the business was a priority. And then I built my team up, and I had the pleasure that I was on the BBC. So I was on BBC
Yeah.
Breakfast, went to Parliament, and I was part of that group that changed the face, and with the celebrities, and we were all up there, and we was able to get, it's not perfect by any means, but we were able. So I was able to use all of my influence and then work across that for quite a while, actually, and I thoroughly enjoyed it from there.
And that's so impactful. And even that story, you don't, first of all, you don't do things by half, do you, right?
No.
It's like, okay. And I still remember just seeing you on social media then about when you were doing the bodybuilding championships and all the fitness challenges. And I was like, Adele, like, wow, right? You're not someone that's going, I'm just growing old and doing
No,
knitting. No offense to anybody
no.
that knits, okay? But you get what I mean?
Yeah,
And so just let me focus on that point. So you left a very successful career,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Obviously that was driven by your own growth, but also what happened with your friend to be able to go,
yeah,
life's short. What am I
yeah.
going to do? And then
Mm.
really channeled your energy, if I pick this up right, and from knowing your
Mm.
story, around really focused around the menopause space. Is that
Yeah.
right? And really focus
Yeah.
on that. So
Yeah.
just let's focus on that chapter just for a few moments.
Yeah.
What was your biggest lessons, especially around resilience, when it came to growing your business and putting yourself out there? Talk to me about that if you can.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, you sort of leave that career and you think you have no skills. And then you quickly learn that you've got a lot of transferable skills. That was
Yeah.
the biggest thing. I should never have doubted the level of transferable skills. And that was things like I created my own balanced scorecard and the Lord is coming out, the
Yeah.
KPI tracker. Because if you haven't got your cash flow and your numbers, all my operations management, my lean, everything, I just lift and dropped into this business. It was just me on my own. But I thought to myself, I've got to. And the interesting bit is all the time I used to have to do quarterly reviews on my business. I missed them. I missed having the accountability to go, this is what. So I built that in, that element. I took all of the good and built it in. The best thing is my slides were pink and they weren't corporate colors. My colors were
Yeah.
pink, and it was the best bit. And we had everything from that point of view. So that was transferable. The bit that I got very, very wrong was people telling me I should be everywhere. You have to
Okay.
be everywhere to be known. And what that was doing on my resilience is that I was spending more time chasing people and being everywhere, not even to enough time of following up leads and everyone, oh, yeah, I'll have a coffee and a connection. There's 4 or 5 leads in a meeting. And I was like, no. And I realized, yeah, you guys might all do that, but you
Hmm.
haven't got metrics that say it's not working. So, and that's when I realized, I realized that I was swimming upstream to everybody else from that women in business. And I stopped a year and thought, no, this is not working because it's quality over quantity. And then I got back out my stakeholder map, my strategy, and then I realized it's about quality over quantity. And that was the biggest mistake. I felt I lost a lot of ground in the first year.
But what amazing insight to be able to notice that
Mm,
quite quickly, relatively in your
mm.
business journey as well. And so what were some of the things that you then said, no, I'm not doing, so that you could focus on the things that worked best for you?
Yeah. So I worked out, I really got underneath who my ideal client was.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different should you have an ideal client. But at the end of the day, I did the work. I knew where my ideal client was. So why was I going to meet? It was nice having a coffee with those lovely people. But again, it wasn't going to make my boat go faster.
Yeah.
And I used to say to women, oh, I'm terrible. They're like, "Oh, I'm going then." I go, why? They would just think, well, I must. And I go, well, why are you going? How does that take you forward for your business? Oh, yeah, but I go and meet my friend now. I said, well, then it's not networking and building your business. So I worked out where my key clients were or where the people that connect me to my key clients were. And then I went and found all of the best places to do that. And sometimes I went once and thought, well, actually, it's not quite what it said on the tin. It's not, I'm not going to go back. And then others, I then realized how I was able to build it. And then what I then also realized is I looked at the top influences in the menopause area that I was in, and I went out and connected to them. As simple as things like on LinkedIn, I was one of the first people to use voice notes because people don't use voice notes. Just
Yeah.
tippy tappy away. And I'm like, it's just easier. And then you grab them. So I've done some bold things. I inboxed some quite influential people in the menopause world, and they said, yes, come and have a conversation. And that was where I was able to get through to the point where I live locally on BBC Kent Radio, I was the menopause commentator for over a year because I built the credibility and the network up. But I did it by working out where my ideal clients were.
There's so much around that. And what I love about how you've shared this is really how you've done that in a way that plays with your entrepreneurial superpower. And also when you recognized, hold on, you may have been doing things, and you use the word mistake. Okay. And what I love about this is because you recognize that's not the game for me to play, whereas other people might be going out there having conversations with friends and networking, but
Mm.
if they were a different superpower from you, that actually could be the better game for them to
Yeah.
play. But
Yeah.
let's focus on you here, right? So you mentioned right at the start a Lord profile. So let me take you on a bit of a trip down memory lane for those listening. When I worked with Adele and your team in the banking world many, many years ago, we used this profiling tool with your leader and also your peers.
Yeah.
And you came through as a Lord profile, and Lords are absolutely amazing at being able to just look at the metrics of obviously, as you said, and be able to look at, right, what does this tell me? How do I focus my time? What's the metrics telling me? What's my KPIs? They're very good at being able to squeeze the best out resources, time, and even opportunities. Is
Yeah.
this right so far from what I'm sharing with you,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. That's me.
And I remember at that time when we did this as a team debrief back in the corporate world, you had the same role as other operational managers across the UK, right? And I remember the comment that was made, and feel free to elaborate on this, but your peer who worked in a different site and you were focusing on different operations, but effectively doing very similar things. And your manager at the time, your leader, when they looked at the difference between all his team, was like, ah, that's why when I go into a Dell site in Gillingham, it is like everything is so precise. Everything is great. Adele is amazing to, as you said before, that kind of wartime leader where he would get you into situations to go, this needs fixed. Needs to be more effective, more efficient, etc. Right?
Yeah.
And that's where you really excelled, which is amazing as a Lord profile superpower. And again, that was within a leadership role in the corporate world. Whereas your colleague was the complete opposite. Don't know if you remember who I'm talking about, right? So she was a supporter profile. And what your leader at that time, he said and shared, he's like, that's why when I go into her site, it's got a very different feel.
Yeah.
There's a different buzz around the place. They're doing different initiatives. There's a lot, like the people focus scores and all their things like that was very, very different. They were still getting results in terms of what they had to deliver, but he was like, that makes so much sense now. I can't expect Adele to be like your colleague or vice versa. So I love the fact that even from that time, you were able to then, even after it sounds like, looking at roles and opportunities to go, right, where can I actually lean into my best self, my strengths around that? Did that make sense? Anything you want to say to that around your leadership approach as a Lord profile before we look at it as a business owner?
No, definitely. And also, so interestingly, when I made the switch from finance to HR, people are like, really, it's like I rolled off a graduate program because I was in the bank for 22 years. I ended up in HR. But what that gave me is, and I remember, oh, Adele, we've got a slot for you at 2:00. I went, well, I want to be there for the whole meeting. They went, well, it's only the HR bit. I went, how can I get your people in the right place at the right time with the right resources? Obviously, they sort of, because I was hired by HR, but was a business partner and it was a P&L facing business. So I was like, yeah, come on then. They went, HR don't ask questions like that. I said, yeah, but I've spent the last 12 years in finance and operations and lean and project management. I said, so I can really help you. Oh, you're going to get bored, right? So there's the deal. Straight in. And I said, right, who's got the papers? And I'm like, right, they'd done one. Well, I don't understand that. So how did you recruit that? And all of a sudden they're like, oh dear, because I was really getting under the business. And at the end of the first meeting, we're talking about at that level, everyone in that room was one grade above me. And then she came over to me, she said, thank you. She said, you're in right from the start. You're in all my team meetings, in my operational meetings, because you get the business. And she said, normally in HR, they've only ever been in HR. So again, it was transferable into there as well. And I loved it. I really did.
And it just goes to show the fact that you can still be focusing on a people agenda, but you could be doing it in a way that is natural to the way that you think and the way that you add most value. And again, I just want to lift this up, to kind of a bigger picture, because as business owners, this is why you can still have a very similar business as somebody else, like say a business coach or HR consultants. I've got a lot of clients that are they're specialists, but you could be running your business as, let's say, your superpower is a Lord profile,
Yeah.
But compared to one of my other clients, Gemma, who I worked with, she's a supporter profile. So just the different approaches around marketing, the delivery, what lights you up, what doesn't light you up, that's where the real magic happens as
Yeah.
well. So how did then, and you already shared it in terms of when you went, hold on, the data's not telling me that
Yeah.
I'm spending my time doing the right thing
Yeah.
in your business. Is there any other ways that your Lord Superpower Adele has helped you after you left the corporate world? So back as a business owner, anything else that you can kind of lean
Yeah,
into?
I would probably say my Lord profile underpins my coaching business that I
Yeah.
did for 5 years. Oh, and even more so in my new business, well, my
Yeah.
non-profit that I started a few months ago. Because at the end of the day, I look at all the data, and it's not just finance data. Oh, I love Google Analytics. I like looking at social media impressions and pulling it together in a dashboard, plus the qualitative, the words as well. So I look at the words and the figures, and
Yeah.
it's not just about. So I will look at the data, and then I will look at like feedback or comments. So I take my law, but I sort of look at it holistically as well.
Yeah.
So I look at the words and the figures, and not just on its own. But for me, everything that I ran that business, even it was just me and a few others, I ran it as that. But I also have to remember what Lord isn't.
Yeah.
So therefore, and I always remember in Gillingham, and then my team said it. I had a small team working with my coaching business. They'd be like, Adele, you're 200 miles ahead, and you go, come with me. Do you not get it? And they can
Yeah.
just stop and share it. But I do remember that because I got fast tracked to leadership by the time I was 21. And do you know what the irony was? I'm showing my age now, the whole microfilming women. So they were a lot older, probably my age now, actually. And I used to say to them, why did the women all go into the microfilming unit? It's because it's cold in there and they get hot. Now there's the irony, right? And look at where I ended up. And they said, we love you, Adele. We love your energy. We love your drive. But here's your Christmas present. We're buying it for you as a gift. And it was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And
Yeah.
that's when I realized that the Lord, and to be honest, as I've grown through the last 5 years, I have an element, don't be surprised, of ADHD. So there is, but it's my superpower,
Yeah.
and it does link to my traits, but I embrace it. And then I realized that, yeah, there are numbers, but I need people. And to
Yeah.
be honest, I got that book so early in my career, I did become Adele. Although I was finance and Lord, I was a people Lord. And I always got,
Yeah.
they called it the soft skills. Do you remember that language? So you can do all the soft skills. They weren't soft. So I realized, but again, I looked at that still through that Lord mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I do need the people, because I couldn't, I was the fastest processor, and I got promoted because I was the fastest processor and the smartest, could add up, but I was not a people person. But lucky some wonderful ladies told me that at 21. And that was when I got into psychology and realized, actually, I can't do this on my own. So the Lord still is very analytical. So when I look at
Yeah.
people and personalities, it's still through that analytical element of it.
And I heard you say, even as a business owner as well, your team,
Yeah.
who were some of the people that, as you were growing the business,
Yeah.
focusing on around menopause, who were
Yeah.
the people that were then in your corner, and what were
Yeah.
their skill set and their superpowers compared to yours?
Yeah. So I didn't recruit mini versions of me. I put complementary people around me,
Yeah.
who could tell me, Adele, can you just, if I was really focused on something and they go, Adele, there are people in this process. And
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. So I put people around me that were trusted and knew what I was like on a good day, and also knew what I was like on a bad day. And also, if I get my energy by being on my own and not
Yeah.
around people. So if I'm burning out because running your own business, you've got network, and then you're coaching,
Yeah.
and then you're talking to your family and you're like, I don't want to talk now. For me,
Yeah.
that drains me. So they also recognised when Adele needed to be on my own. So when I was in corporate, I used to go into check clearing. I used to just walk out my massive office and just do check clearing like this. So obviously in executive coaching, I said, look, I'm just going to take some time out. I'm going to go for a walk. So I knew what I was, and I always made sure, to be fair, a little bit like Gillingham, I
Mm-hmm.
always put people around me that complement. I always believe to focus on my strengths and be aware of my opportunities, But when you're a small business owner, you have to fix those if it's about learning things. But when
Yeah.
it's about style, and I had the opportunity to build my team, I had complementary people around
That
me.
is, that's definitely a winning formula around it as well. And because as you kind of alluded to, Lord profiles are very different from
Mm,
business owners that have the opposite of superpower.
mm,
Lords tend to be a bit more introverted. So do you know what I also love, Adele, is the fact that sometimes people have that misconception
mm.
that Lord profile business owners that have got that superpower, they just like to hide in the back corner all the time. They're not good at public speaking. They're not
Mm,
good at putting themselves out there. But what I love about, and really hope this is a great
mm.
way to kind of be a role model as well, is that you can still make a big difference in the same way that you did with in the menopause space. You were
Yeah,
able to do that by leveraging through other people and
yeah,
the right connections and the right focus to really make a big impact on that movement
yeah.
there as well. So it just goes to show that the way you do it doesn't have to be like a star profile or a supporter or a deal
No,
maker. There's different
no.
ways.
And I knew with my Lord what default was. And I also had in the background that speech impediment because part of the 6 months sabbatical that I took off, I
Yeah.
went into speech therapy. So when I realized I came out, to run my business, I thought to myself, I've got to find my voice, but mindful that Lord default is introvert. But I need to be a
Yeah.
star sometimes. But I'd make sure my rest and recovery and also block time out afterwards.
Yeah.
And someone said to me, so I spoke to an amazing woman called Sean. I said, Sean, I know you run a radio show. Could you give me some hints and tips? It was in lockdown. Could you give me some hints and tips on the show? She went, no. I was like, oh, okay. She went, you're coming on. I was like, oh, okay. That's interesting. And I co-host her for 3 years and I drop in now and again. That is what sometimes you have to do. You have to make that bold move. But don't get me wrong, I would book the day off afterwards because
Yeah.
I would be exhausted and I'd go back to Adele's new version of check clearing. But you have to put yourself out there. And I just made sure that I topped myself up. But I loved it because, again, it was a skill that I realized as a Lord, I couldn't if you are running your own business, it
Hmm.
is the Lord. Sometimes you have to be all those others,
Yeah.
and you have to find a way of doing it. But again, we come off, and I'd go right. So what was our Spreaker results, and where we download? Shana go, I don't know. I went, let's get a dashboard, and she go, you're wired different. But it was brilliant.
Oh, I love that. And just on a reflection based on something that you said before, obviously, when you were in the corporate world and when you
Yeah.
shared the vulnerable story about
Mm.
when you were presenting, you would know your facts and your slides, and then you'd be like, okay, let's deliver it. But when you were then there going, I don't know what's in the slides, and from a memory, and I do appreciate that often could be down to some of the kind of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
menopause symptoms as well. But I can also imagine how, as a Lord profile, that was just extra scary because
Oh.
Lord profiles do not like to wing things. They need to know what they're doing. They need to be prepared for that. How was that now in reflection, just
Oh.
from a Lord profile perspective?
It was excruciating. I can honestly
Yeah.
tell you it was excruciatingly painful. So, as somebody that hates uncertainty, I
Yeah.
love control and I go in on my numbers. And the fact that the way my hormones were playing around, there was nothing between literally my brain and my mouth. And that I think is what caused literally for me to break over was because the way I berated myself and the self
Mhm.
talk and the self harm was so horrific because as a Lord that I'd based a career on not doing that. And it was in the
Yeah.
biggest audience ever. And whether they said it or not, in my head it was, well, she's supposed to be a top performer and she's on a trajectory and she's done this and she's done that. Do you know what? I couldn't even tell you that's what regardless of what everybody else was saying,
Yeah.
that's what I was saying to myself. And I absolutely hated it. And I can honestly say it was probably apart from one other, which is obviously my diagnosis, it was probably the lowest point because I honestly thought I was losing my mind and I'd lost a career that I'd worked so hard for. Yeah.
And I can only imagine how tough that was. And from an outside perspective, also just that gift in a way for you to be able to obviously focus and work through that and get the support that you needed to then
Yeah.
be able to go right, what's next for that chapter. So I really do
Yeah.
I love the fact that you shared that
Mm.
transition from the corporate to the chunk of your life or the
Yeah.
chapter around, focusing on the menopause. I
Mm.
now know that you're in another chapter as well in your business, and you kind of alluded to it with your other part of your business and kind of the work that you do. Just tell us about that now in terms
Yeah.
of where you are and what you're focusing on now,
Yeah.
Adele.
So my business was going from strength to strength, and I did get back on that bodybuilding stage twice, as you know. And as I was going for my April 23, you spend a lot of time on Stairmasters and treadmills to get that body fat down. So I consume content, and I was listening to more and more elements from the US about blood work, about private blood work, especially in the sport I was doing, because it's a tough process. So I said, right, it's data. Right. And don't laugh. When I go for bodybuilding, I've got spreadsheets of food in and metrics and heart rate. And my coach was like, oh dear, because I just run it as a dashboard because it's a project. So I ran it and I thought, right, I'm going to add my blood work to that. So got on stage again, did really well. But again, both bodybuilding, I've just felt the fatigue was off the floor, on the floor. It was awful. And people say, well, you get tired anyway. But just honestly, a bit like menopause, something doesn't feel right. So I thought, I'm going to have my blood work done. That's just exactly what I'm going to do. So did the show in April, had my blood work done, and I was so excited, right? And I got the paperwork, and there was all red marks on it. I don't do red marks. I don't like errors.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what does the red marks mean? And they said, in terms of the blood markers for reversing out of the bodybuilding show, absolutely fine. But your hormones are zero. Are you taking HRT? I went, yeah. I went, it's not working. It's not absorbing in your body. I was like, okay. So you need to talk to your healthcare provider about that. And the other one is your red blood cells are you tired? Like with some sort of iron yes. I'm not reversing and I'm struggling to put weight back on. Right, go. So as always, I went to my GP. I did apologise afterwards. So I walked in and he said to me, "What's the problem?" I said, "Look at all these red marks. This is my private blood work." You've had private blood work? I said, "Yeah, well, I'm a competitor. Of course I do." I said, "But these markers are fine. This here is HRT is not working. How old are you?" And I went, "Well, I'm coming up for 53. Well, you don't need HRT." I said, No, I do. I really do, please. And I want to know why this is working. And I want to know why these iron markers are in." He said, "Clearly, you're rather upset." I said, "Yeah, I am." He went, "Right, I'm going to put you on antidepressants." That was 14 years apart. I went, "Right, I'm going to stop you there. I am a qualified menopause coach." And 14 years ago, done the same. He was like, oh, okay. I said, "This blood work isn't right. I've studied it for 6 months. I'll send you to a female doctor." So I went to a female doctor. She said, "Right, okay, your HRT, you're not absorbing it. We need to get that sorted straight away," which thankfully now they have. The question is how long was it not working? Because at this moment in time, I have to remember healthcare has moved on for women, but
Yeah.
I was before we really started to talk about it. And you put a patch on and it was never tested. I don't know how long. And then she said to me, "You're going to need to go to hospital for your red blood cells." So I'll tell you a funny story. So I walked up into reception the Tuesday after bank holiday, and they said, "Right, you're up on the floor." And I'm like, "Oh, I've never been up here before. That's really strange." And then I walked into the waiting room full of really old women, and they were staring at me. I was like, "God, am I in the right place?" She said, "Yes, we've got your file here. And it's 2 inches thick." I was like, "We're going to weigh you and your height." I'm like, I said, "I'm really sorry. I've got client meetings all afternoon. Can I just grab my iron tablets and go?" No, the consultant wants to speak to you. So I walked in. There was a nurse sitting on the right in front of me. And then we've got to wait for a second nurse. I'm like, "Really? I'm really struggling for time." She sat
Hmm.
behind me. And I was like, "This is really odd." And he said, "Did anybody question your early menopause?" I said, "No." "Did anybody question your double partial hip replacement?" I said, "No." He went, "You've got myeloma." I was like, "I'm really sorry, I don't even know what you're talking about." Then the nurse on the bed leant forward, put the book on the table. In the top right-hand corner was the green Macmillan logo and a very old lady in the middle of it. I went, Right, okay, can I just stop you there? Are you telling me myeloma is cancer?" They said, "Yes, it's a blood cancer and it will attack the bones and they will become worse in osteoporosis, and then it puts obviously into your kidneys and everything else." I said, and I'd obviously burst into tears. I went, this is not what I expected. And they said, we've got one more thing to tell you. It's incurable. I was like, okay. So I, rather hysterically, I had to cancel my afternoon appointments, and I didn't go away with iron tablets. I come away with appointment after appointment, and that's pretty much been my life. So I was 3 weeks with lots of not nice tests, bone biopsies, more blood, and we are at stage 1. But I've got 2 high risk genetic markers, which means I am at high risk to go into the next stage. But what they did say is everything I've done with my food, move and snooze, and the way with my resilience is holding my own. And they said, you found it. The average age of finding it is women in their 70s, hence why the waiting room was with older ladies and an old lady on the book. And they find it because they break a bone, and it's worse than osteoporosis. So there was a real linkage between menopause and myeloma. And I said, so think of Lord profile, right?
Yeah.
So we can't give you any data, because if you saw it, you'd have 5 years to live and you're 20 years younger. So there's none of the data that matches you. So we're going to have to watch you. So you've got a level of uncertainty. Yes, not what you give a Lord. That's not
No.
what you give a Lord. And I'm like, how am I going to control this? They went, there's nothing to control. There's nothing to beat. There's nothing to fight. We've got to watch you. And I went, I can't do this. So they said, we're going to sit and watch you for 3 months. So I went away, as always, like menopause, exactly the same way. But the thing is, though, I started to lose money because I was a coach. So if I'm not coaching and I'm in hospital and appointments after appointment and I'm tired, and yeah, I was losing money and clients, and it was feeling rather real. I researched the top myeloma. Spooky enough, he's based in London. I got into Harley Street to see him. And within 5 minutes, because I took all the data, all the hypothesis, and why is it 5 years? Because this is me and everything else. And he said, look, I'm going to tell you now, it's not a conversation between private and NHS, because you're going to be here for life. You're in the wrong hospital. I will bring you into my Cosmos trial, where we're looking at stage 1, smouldering, multiple, and we want to understand how you're holding your own. So I went back through more and more tests. And the interesting bit is, which again was just as devastating for me, they did my bone density and it's really low. So I'm borderline osteoporosis, which is what we're working through now. I've got to go into more PET scans, and I've got a stress fracture on my lower hip. So I'm saying, is it because my HRT was working or not working? I've done everything they said, to keep your body strong and everything. But now they want to look at me, because they said, well, we don't know, because the women already in their 70s were the age group of my mum that got caught up in the World Women's Health Initiative 20 years ago, that were told to stop taking HRT. So all of a sudden, they're wanting to use my experience, use my knowledge. And I said to him, but I feel like a fraud. Everything I've spoken about for the last 14 years and being on a bodybuilding stage. And to be honest, I collapsed on the floor in the hospital and said, why? And he got hold of me and said, if you hadn't have looked after yourself, whether the HRT was working or not, you would be a crumbled mess in a wheelchair right now. So yeah, it's been really, really tough. So to give that diagnosis to a Lord, and the ultimate part of it is that I was losing clients. And then because in that process as well, I lost one of my team leaders, Helen, to breast cancer. Thing is, the irony was, do you remember when I told you I wanted to set up a charity?
Yeah.
When my family finally left me and I said, look, I've got to get on, go after 2 weeks, I realised that I was the woman in my own charity. And that's it. That's what I wanted to support. So I made a tough decision after going into meltdown and setting up more businesses and being even more entrepreneurial, because I didn't want to face the truth. And I had a massive breakdown just before Christmas. I caught COVID because my immune system's impaired. It took me out. Honestly, it was the universe telling me to stop and slow down. And I did. And I made the decision to close the coaching business and set up, because I was talking to more and more women who were going bankrupt. So women were leaving small businesses for menopause for 32%. It's circa 55%, and we all go bankrupt, and I'm borderline. So there's a massive injustice. I'm taking everything. You talk about my journey. We're taking everything in my journey. So the next part of my journey is like menopause. I do not want another woman to go through what I've done as a small business owner and try to manage cancer alongside a business. It's really, really tough. Mm.
Adele, I just, I don't even know where to start with them. Like, oh,
Mm.
like from what a journey. And
Yeah.
it could be, I suppose, what's going through my head. And I know you did share with me your journey when we last caught up, when I asked you to come on the podcast to go, Adele, come and talk to me about, what you're in the menopause stuff. And you're like, yes, man, but here's what's kind of happening now. And now I've always got more context around, where you are and how it has been an
Mm.
incredibly tough journey, understandably.
Mm.
I suppose my question is, what's what's driving that passion, that motivation, that I'm going to keep getting up now? And I know it's more kind of for, on a charity basis.
Yeah.
So I've picked up right, that community
Yeah.
interest kind of business as well. But
Yeah. Yeah.
like, what's making you go, that's when I'm channeling my time and my energy, rather than just going, I'm just not going to even do anything. I'm just going to go and do something else.
Yeah, I know, and there's a few parts to that, and the part is, I realised that as a small business, I had menopause with sick pay
Yeah,
and salary. And menopause is tough, but it doesn't take you in and out of hospital. I'm not onto chemo because my cancer's not like that. There's variability. So women are
yeah,
facing this. I haven't got that anymore. I
yeah,
haven't got that safety. I have no choice but to get up and I can tell you now, which is one of the things I'm working on. I paid into this system for many, many years with tax and insurance and trying to get a little bit of help now. I'm in a 26-week backlog and I'm critical. It's horrific. I'm really lifting. So why am I doing it? There is that. I I know that I can, like you said, I can lead. That wartime. So if we
yeah,
then unpack that. So I was at my best when we were going through the financial crisis as wartime. What I didn't realize is that my hormones were not on my side. But once I knew how to harness them, and I dealt with it with my food movements and everything else, my resilience, it got sorted. And then I realized that menopause was wartime, you know.
yeah,
And what I realized was I'd set out what I wanted to do was make a difference, talk on the BBC. And in the April, I stood at government level in front of a lot of women. And I said, when I started out, there was no celebrity books, no coaches. And then I realized then it's a different fight. It's not the wartime with menopause that I had. And I finally finished my book 5 years ago, and all the proceeds of that, which is How to Build a Strong Body Through Menopause for business women, only for business women, is going to the charity. And then I realized that menopause was not that wartime anymore. And I was fighting the biggest war of my life, and that was trying to handle this. So it's for me, it's a wartime, and it's about doing exactly what I've got a track record of being able to identify the problem and do it. This is just another one of those. And I'm doing it in the memory of my 3 friends. And the more I talk to women, dealing with cancer as a woman is far more hushed than even menopause. So it's like it's that element of it as well. And also it's having the ability to use that lower profile. And I'm building a different way of business. So it's about social enterprise. So I did an MBA module, it was all about corporate social responsibility. You know what Dale's like, love this. Went back to the bank and go, and it never take off. So actually leading, I talked to you before about that Gillingham feeling, that feeling of
yeah,
running. By being around CEOs like myself in nonprofit and charity, we think about social purpose, and I get it. So yes, we're going to help the business owner through their cancer journey by helping with personal things like whatever they need, like eyebrows to food made for them, or dog walking children and whatever. And professional, we're going to help them. Like when I was away, somebody could have sat me down and said, Adele, what's 4 things? Let's get a quick PDF. Let's get it on your website for $4.99. Create leveraged income for them. So we're going to help them
yeah,
to do that. But the entrepreneur, the social entrepreneur is we're going to use other women in business to support that. So we're going to create them. And so there's that element of it. And then also we're going for angel donations. So it's Kent and Medway. So we've got women that are running Kent businesses that want to have a social purpose, but they're just them on their own. So one woman is donating a percentage of a membership. We've got another one doing facials, and they're creating it. So we're creating this circular income of social enterprise. And that is like, that's what I was meant to do. And though it's more than just the CIC, we're creating a different way of doing business, because corporate, as we know, is driven by shareholders and all those great things. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Women in business can be quite aggressive. Let's get a 6-figure salary. Let's do this. Let's go hunting. Don't get me wrong, I've been a lord, but I've always been a farmer. Let's have that. So for me, this is the sweet spot. It brings everything from my journey into one place. And it's that wartime, but it's bringing everything I've loved from all of my career and my journeys into one space. And the thing is, we're talking to people and it's getting traction, and they go, yeah, we want to buy in and be part of it. And then they go, oh, Adele, just out of interest, how come it's so important to you? And I go, I'm the woman in my own story. So we're getting them over the line with the thinking of social enterprise and the need, without me even sharing my story. And when they share my story, they go, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, okay, But as a lord with this business, when you are going out and talking to people, they've got their own journey. So you absorb their emotion. I share a bit amount, I share. So all I could say is I'm a lot more tired going home than I would have been, because it's very emotional. I'm just learning to detach as a lord. But we've got dashboards, we've got business plans, but they love it. And so for me, it's bringing the fusion. So hopefully that answers
Yeah,
why
it
I'm
totally
so,
does in terms
it makes me
of,
feel alive. Yeah.
yeah, because knowing you, not just your Lord profile, but just knowing you from the story that you've shared and over the years, as well as you aren't the type of person that just sits down and does nothing, right? That would actually be to your detriment. So I
Yeah.
can see why this has given you that connection, that purpose to go, right, hold on, how can I make a difference here? How do you channel that energy?
Yeah.
How do you also do that? And in the same way
Yeah.
that you did with the kind of menopause focused
Mm.
work, and this is about, and for a better word, creating that legacy, isn't it? To go,
Yeah. And
this is
that's,
a difference.
yeah, and that's it. My daughter's involved, and we're actually what the model. It's a bit like when we was in the bank and we ran the leadership program. We run it across all the operations.
Yeah,
So we're going to create the blueprint in Kent. We're going to have a building. So we're aspiring to have co-working that's got treatment rooms, a gym, funky music. And
yeah,
the business model will be, if you're the business owner going through cancer, then the membership is paid by the non-profit. If you're a normal, business owner without it, then you come and go. But it'd be
yeah,
everything you want in one space. And I want to take that blueprint and take it into every county of the UK and build that legacy of stronger together. And it's that whole ethos. And I've always had that as my mantra. But for me, everything, as this is the thing, as dark as every journey, and I have sat down on the sofa and thought, why me? Only give
yeah,
myself 20% and then I kick myself up. But when I sit back and learn, it's so easy to think, right, okay, I'm going to park all those skills. I'm never going to, what am I going to learn? And for me, it's taking the best of what I've learned on every part of my journey and making sure I leverage it. But already I'm building a team around me that I know that aren't lords, and they're doing
yeah,
what they're doing. So for me, it's making sure, even in those darkest moments, take the time to stop and go, okay, what is your superpower? And don't get me wrong, I've had lots, and I'm still undergoing a huge amount of counseling, because you can imagine
yeah,
it's just, there's no end date. It's just an abyss. So, and you can imagine for me, I'll make you laugh very quickly. So I got my first counseling session, and I walked in, I sat down with my arms folded. And she went, right, Adele, you're the 4-box model type, aren't you? I was like, maybe. She went, right. She goes, I have been brought in especially for you. Cancer doesn't discriminate. I've dealt with celebrities, CEOs. So can you do me a favour? Can you walk back out the room and come back in with your arms unfolded? Okay. And to be fair, we've been amazing ever since. But because they'd realised that I wasn't, first of all, I was not the normal myeloma,
yeah,
and I was not a normal person as such. So they
yeah,
brought in the big guns. Macmillan have been amazing, and I had a lot of help. For that level, and it was because all of the default of Lord, control, OCD, you don't give that type of person an uncertain
yeah.
diagnosis. And that's where I needed the help.
It's-
Mm.
Well, all I can say is
Mm.
just first of all, thank you for showing up and
Yeah.
sharing that
Mm.
story and your journey and the ups and the downs with us. I just think it is
Mm.
just so inspirational in terms of
Mm.
what you're doing and the ripple effect. Because I really go back to what you said. I'm not saying by any means it's easier in the
Mm,
corporate world,
mm,
but it is a different experience. And,
yeah.
I've had other podcast guests that talked about this as well. We had Liz Melville on recently, and she's talking about that as business owners. It's like when things happen, okay, whether it's with ourselves or with others that are close to us, as a business owner, when we have to make those decisions to go, do I take time off for me? Do I
Mm,
take time off for the people that are important to me, my loved ones, etc.? It could be a
yeah.
really tricky
Mm,
and challenging situation because it's not a case of I could take time off and I've got my sick leave or whatever, right? It's that, well, but if I do that, what's the knock-on effect there as well? So
yeah.
it's amazing to see that you're on that journey to
Yeah.
really help
Yeah.
reduce some of that challenge for business owners
Yeah.
particularly.
Yeah, definitely. And that they want a business to come back to. If
Yeah.
through that journey they go, actually, let's not get it into bankruptcy, let's get it into an asset
Yeah.
where we can sell it, And I know that not all journeys are gonna, there'll be journeys and like my friend Helen, but we took all the burden off of the family to
Yeah.
close the business and done everything for them. So yeah, and it's not again running focus groups, same as I did with menopause. Until you share your story, no
Yeah.
one, and like my mum said, Adele, not everybody's like you. You've been brave, you've been bold. But honestly, truly, at this time, I really have I have nothing to lose.
To
And that is
lose.
probably the last bit of the superpower. I have nothing to lose and everything to gain now. But for me, the running, but for me personally, as a Lord, the team in London in the trial know what I'm like, and I'm heard, I'm understood, and I'm involved. So I'm a partner. When I felt very passive in my treatment plan, I
Yeah.
was not happy. I
Hmm.
wanted a partnership. And so for me, that's what's made that journey. Okay, I can't control the outcome. Well, I
Yeah.
can to an element of it, but I want to be a partner in the conversations. And that's the best that as a Lord could ever hope for, is
Yeah.
a partnership in my treatment and observations. That's all I ever wanted. Just wanted someone to listen to me.
Honestly, I could listen to you for hours and hours and hours. And that kind of connects back to, I suppose, that question, the naive question in my head. I'm like I was sitting thinking, but if I got a diagnosis like that, what would I do? Do you know what I mean? And it's like that
Yeah.
really, that question of going like, would I spend my time focusing on growing my business? What would I do?
Yeah.
And it's just a really hard question to
Yeah.
kind of even get your head
It
around.
is.
But I understand now why
Mm,
you could then be that passive person, and that's
mm.
not you though. So it's
No.
that element of how do you then go, right? How
Yeah.
do I have that mission? How do I have that
Yeah.
drive? How does that help you personally, but
Yeah.
also being on that journey to help others and
Yeah.
bringing in all your experience and channeling that into this
Mm.
is why you're here, and all those experiences have come together
Yeah.
to to
It
shape
does.
that chapter.
And it was when we was having those focus groups with sort of the women, and they said, people going, "Oh, it's about time. Perhaps you stopped your business, and it's probably the one time you want your business." And
Yeah,
so, yes, you can talk to your family, but what women have said is, women have said, "I wished you were there."
yeah,
This is for business owners. I wish you were there when we got diagnosed, and then the
yeah,
women we're talking to, because we give that complete impartial. Just tell us. Just you don't have to make a decision today, because the
yeah,
people around you just want to care for you and they worry about you being too busy. Let's close the business. Let's do this. And it's the one time you don't want to make rash decisions.
yeah,
So we can sit down and work with the business owners. So we can just give them some help. Because what I realized, same with menopause, I've sketched out everything that I wished I'd had from the moment I'd heard those words as a business owner. And
yeah,
with my co-founder, Fiona, she's out the other side of breast cancer, but she was a contractor in London, and people say, "Oh, you're having some time off." She's like, "No, I've got to pay the bills." So again, it's just what we would have wanted is somebody just to have picked us up and said, "You know what? Go and have your treatment. I've got a PA looking after your email box.
yeah,
We've put a header on your website that says this. We've created a PDF. We've got food for you. Just something, because it is, because you're running your business, you're going to treatment, you come home and you can't even you've got the fatigues toed up, you can't even eat. So we just want
Yeah.
to be able to do that. And if at the end of it, they don't want their business, it's an informed, exactly like menopause, it's an informed decision, not
Yeah.
one based out of fear, which is what I wanted to deal with menopause. I'm just bringing the learning, again, literally the learning all the way through to this project.
Yeah.
A legacy. It will
A
outlive.
legacy.
And my daughter's involved. Everyone's involved. So yeah, I want to leave something bigger than me, and that's what we're doing.
And honestly, just this has touched me personally, and I'm sure everybody that's been listening to this in terms of the journey and the support and just the vulnerability and the passion that you've been sharing here as well, Adele. So I do want to say thank you for showing up and doing that. I ask this question to everybody at the end of the podcasts, and it's you can think about it in terms of your business, or you can think about it in terms of what you're doing with the community interest as well. But like if your business or if this movement could say anything to you right now as you move forward on that journey, what would it say to you?
Um, for me, it would be have faith in your vision. You know, have faith,
Yeah,
have faith in what you believe in. And sometimes you've got to hold your nerve.
yeah,
So but when I think for me, I always thought I had a powerful why, and then you get a powerful why. And the interesting bit, I'd always gone through force, force, force. You force yourself in your career,
yeah.
you force yourself. But when that why is really your why, I cannot believe the flow of people coming to me. And I knew it was possible. I just needed to hold my nerve.
That's powerful. And I love the fact that you know that you don't have to just do this yourself as well. And it's about just kind of getting the right people to
Yeah.
help with this movement as well
Mm.
and having that faith and
Mm.
having that kind of like really sticking to that as well. So honestly, you're just such an inspiration. Thank you so much
No,
for showing
honestly,
up.
thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. We go a long way back. So early in this next part of my journey. It was meant to be. As we always said, it's always about timing.
It is all about timing, and I still never appreciated the fact that when I first met you, as I say in the corporate world, that you were going to be on this journey as a business owner and what you're doing now. And I remember when you made that transition, I was like,
Yeah.
was keeping in touch, and I saw it on LinkedIn. I was like, oh, good on you. What are you doing? Do you know what I mean now? And so
Yeah.
I never knew that I'd have the
Mm.
privilege of our paths connecting in this way as well. So I look forward to kind of hearing how you continue to focus on what you do, and I just wish you all the best with it. And if there's anything that I can do to help, then obviously you know where I am. And
Yep.
also, I'm sure you've inspired other people listening to this. So I will pop a link into the show
Yep.
notes. I know
Mm.
you've sent me some links as well, but where
Yep.
is the best place generally that you hang out that I can
So
connect people to?
I hang out on LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
I'll be there as Adele Martin, and that's where I show up a lot and contribute. And then obviously our website is stronger together through cancer.org.
Well, on that, Adele, thank you so much. And I look forward to continuing many, many conversations in the future. And honestly, I love the way that you also brought your superpower to life so well throughout this conversation and through your businesses as well. So please do keep on using your superpower for what you're doing and driving things forward. So it's been a real pleasure, Adele. Thank you.
Thank you.
Two quick things before you go. First of all, I would be so grateful if you could do me a favour and take a minute to subscribe, rate, and leave a review of this podcast on your favourite podcast player. This will mean that this episode and future episodes find their way to other business owners to help them on their business journey. And also for you, it'll mean that the next episode will be waiting for you in your feed so that you don't miss out. And then, if you've not already done so, I'd again love to invite you to take the Business Magic Scorecard, because in less than 2 minutes, I promise that it will help you to clearly see where your biggest opportunities are for growth and what's currently going well for you, so that you can keep doing those things. You'll receive your results in a personalised report, along with free exclusive resources to help you move things forward based upon your individual results. And what's more, you can even book in for a free 15-minute virtual cuppa with me so that we can have a real two-way conversation about your business and results. So will it be your design, your mindset, or your strategies that need your attention so that you can confidently grow your business without chaos and confusion? Find out by going to osmansharif.com/scorecard or through the links in the show notes. I look forward to hearing what you make of your results, And until next time, bye for now.